Today we're going to talk about using a SX70 camera. Once again, my version here has been modified by Dennis at Chromatic Parts, and the new Polaroid i2 camera for the purposes of doing a head and shoulder portrait. Now these cameras are very different in terms of their focal length. This has a 116mm lens, and this has a 98mm lens. The 98's a little wide for a portrait. The 116's actually not quite long enough in my opinion, but we'll get into that in a minute. Additionally, the minimum focusing distance on these two cameras is different. The original SX70 style camera is about 10.4 inches minimum focusing distance, whereas the new i2 camera is 15 inches minimum focusing distance. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a test shot, both using the same type film, same emulsion number, the whole 9 yards, portrait at a head and shoulder distance. So not the minimum, because the SX70 is 10.4 inches. That's a little close, but I'm gonna frame them up for a head and shoulder shot so we can look at how the optics render at that distance. And then I'm gonna show you a really cool alternative that the original camera has for doing proper head and shoulder portraits. Let's get to it. So for today's video, I'm wearing my lucky Polaroid sock. I could only find one, but one should be enough. All right, so I've got the SX70 camera all set up. My amazing wife, model Eve, has agreed to pose. Note the blanket, it is very cold outside. You take the blanket off? Yay. So, once again, I'm gonna frame this for head and shoulder and not the minimum, because we really wanna see how the lens, renders the facial at that head and shoulder shot. So I'm gonna get right about here. That's a nice head and shoulder. Get my focus. And now let's get the next camera. All right, so now I've got the i2 camera, and as you know, if you've been watching videos here on Feature Revolution, and by the way, if you've not subscribed, please subscribe to this channel. It's very important that you subscribe today.
Like and subscribe. Like
and subscribe. I'm gonna underexpose the image by about 1/3 of a stop. Normally I would do 2/3 because this camera has a tendency of being a little hot on the images. So we're gonna underexpose it just a hair. I've got whole videos on that if you didn't watch it. So here we go. Once again, I've got to get closer now because this is a wider lens. Okay, so if you're using the original SX70, whether it's the Alpha 1 or the Sonar, you have the ability to use this. This is a Polaroid 1.5 Tele lens designed specifically for those cameras for the purpose of portraiture. These are readily available on eBay. They're not cheap, but they're very, very, very well made. And what's amazing about it is it's a 4-element lens. It changes your minimum focusing distance from 10.4 inches to 24, but it also gives you a 50% magnification of what you're seeing. So it takes that 116 and turns it into like a 174, 175, which actually is a really good focal length for doing head and shoulder portraits. Now, the lens is incredibly sharp. It does vignette sometimes a little on the edges, and it's sharp, but not overly sharp. I mean, you gotta remember, Polaroid material to begin with is only 10 line pairs per millimeter resolution. So you're only gonna get so much out of it. But I, for one, over the last 30 plus years, have used these 1.5 teles for countless portraits, and it's absolutely beautiful. So let's now take another portrait using this, and then we'll compare all three, and I'll give you my final thoughts. All right, now we're gonna try it with the 1.5 telephoto lens snap-on that fits on this camera. It literally just locks onto the camera. You lock it on both sides by pushing it in, and that's all there is to it. You can't leave it on the camera, obviously, when you fold it up, but it's so quick to take on and off that it's a great accessory. Now, again, this is gonna give me a minimum focusing distance of 24 inches. So I'm gonna be back a little bit more, which is gonna create a more natural rendering on the face in terms of the nose, eyes, and ears and their spatial relationship. So let's give it a shot. I'm way back here. So much nicer. Here we go. 3, 2. That looked amazing through the frame. Let's go inside where it's warm and we'll wait for the Polaroids to process. All right, so here we are with the 3 images from the 2 cameras. Before I say anything, can you tell me which one was shot with the i2, which one was shot with the Polaroid SX70 with the normal lens, and which one was shot with the telephoto lens? So here's A, B, and C. Which one do you think it is? Okay, so now I'll give you the information. Image number A here was shot with the I2, and that's very obvious. You can see how much more information is in the image. You can also feel how her face is distorted a little bit in her nose, in her glasses. That's all telltale of a wide angle lens being used too close. Could I focus a little closer with this lens? Yes, and everything that you're seeing that feels wrong would only get more so. The second image here, B, this is with just the standard SX70, you know, at the proper head and shoulder focusing distance. And it feels so much better than A, but once again, even it doesn't feel perfect. So it was very, very, very sharp, which I love, but for a portrait, look at the background. For a portrait, what I want to see is with the 1.5 Tele lens, and look at how gorgeous it is. The background is beautifully soft. Everything in the foreground has nice proportions. Additionally, one other thing that I want to point out is these two are shot through an SLR, so my framing is very consistent. This one, which is on the I2, was shot, and I was compensating for the parallax. And as you can see, this bottom button right here on her dress is what I used as the anchor for the bottom of these two frames. I was able to guess it pretty close, but I wasn't able to guess it perfectly. And as a result, this telephone pole way in the background appears in the image. So what this tells you is that both cameras are incredibly capable cameras. If you've watched all the videos that I've done, that should be very evident. However, if your gig is to do head and shoulder portraits, you really can't beat the SX70. And I would say the SX70 with the portrait lens attached is a really gorgeous option. I mean, look at her hair right here compared to here. It's subtle, but when you see it that way, it's incredible. And when I do something like this, and I compare the I2 to the SX70 with the portrait lens, look at the difference. I mean, it's night and day. This is a proper portrait. This just feels wonky and weird. Now, once again, I love the I2 camera. As a walk-around shooting camera, it's great. If you're into shooting portraits, the SX70 camera with the 1.5 Tele lens, this thing right here, is, in my opinion, the best possible solution. Thank you very much for listening. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Now go shoot some film.